funny how we make assumptions about things when we hear a term or a phrase, and immediately our brain has connected a connotation to it, one that's been ingrained in us since childhood, and one that we accept blindly as factual truth without ever questioning or ever looking beyond that surface information. Because when we do, we see that what we assumed to be one thing is actually altogether something quite different. Then, and only then, will our eyes begin to open, and that veil start to lift. Things are not as they seem, and truth is truly in plain sight. Whether we choose to see it or not depends solely on ourselves. It is correct when they say, once you see, you cannot unsee. So let's scratch beyond that surface layer, friends, and let's start looking at the facts.
Greetings, my friend. You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here. We are giving you all the evidence, the incidents, the places. My friend, we cannot keep this a secret any longer. Can your heart stand the shocking facts about...
This world is not what you think it is. This world is not what you think it is.
People have circumnavigated the Earth. They've flown all over and around the whole world. That's fact. That's a proof.
One of heliocentrists' favorite supposed proofs of their ball Earth theory is the ability for ships and planes to circumnavigate, to sail or fly at right angles to the North Pole and eventually return to their original location. Since the North Pole and Antarctica are covered in ice and guarded no-fly zones, however, no ships or planes have ever been known to circumnavigate the Earth in north-south directions, only east-west. And herein lies the rub. East or westbound circumnavigation can just as easily be performed on a flat plane as it can on a globular sphere.
Well, now to an amazing young man who we first introduced you to more than 6 weeks ago. 19-year-old Matt Guthmiller touched down in El Cajon, becoming the youngest person to fly solo around the world.
The new record-setting round-the-world solo pilot, because of his young age, was all smiles, though clearly exhausted as he was greeted by hugs from his mom. Guthmiller flew from El Cajon to his hometown of Aberdeen, South Dakota, before seeing the world and taking lots of pictures along the way. He made stops in the UK, then Rome, Athens, Cairo, Abu Dhabi, India, the Philippines, Australia, American Samoa, then to Hawaii, where he left early Monday morning.
Congratulations, Matt. My name is Mason Andrews, and I'm a 17-year-old pilot at Louisiana Tech University. This summer, I'm going to be circumnavigating the world to raise funds and awareness for med camps of Louisiana. Right now, I am talking to many people who have done circumnavigations. I will say that the flight planning is a lot more than I think anybody would have ever expected. This trip is going to take me to or over 22 countries. Starting here in Monroe, Louisiana in the U.S., I'll be flying up to Republic Airport in Farmingdale, New York, which is very near where Charles Lindbergh started his transatlantic flight. I'll fly from there to northern Canada in a town called Iqaluit before crossing Greenland to Iceland in Reykjavik. From Iceland, I'll fly down to Le Bourget Airport in Paris, which is where Lindbergh completed his Atlantic crossing. From there, I'll fly down across Italy to Cairo, Egypt. From Egypt to Muscat, Oman. From Oman, across the Indian Ocean to 2 stops in India before crossing over to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. From Malaysia, I'll cross to Christmas Island, Australia, and from there to Broome Island, Australia. I'll make 2 more stops in the mainland of Australia before leaving Australia for Fiji. From Fiji, I will cross the southern Pacific to Pago Pago, American Samoa, and up to the island of Kiribati. From Kiribati, I will fly to Hilo, Hawaii, before completing my trip to Half Moon Bay, California.
guys, we are in Boston, and this afternoon we are hopefully going to be heading into Canada on the next leg of the flight. We had a few minor things on the plane fixed yesterday and this morning, and yeah, we've also met up with Matt, who I introduced you to yesterday. You'll meet him later in the vlog, but he was the youngest pilot to fly around the world back in 2014, so he's going to be joining us for the next few legs, just to, you know, just to have an experienced world navigator on board. So this is, oh crap. Right, I wonder if we can just twist it all the way.
I don't think you thought this through.
Yeah, I think this will be fun. Okay.
No, you're covering up all the dots.
Oh dear. Oh, this is all going wrong. Okay. Greece, Egypt. Okay.
Just don't follow Louis' route.
Is this going to get us killed if we go this way?
Possibly.
It'll be interesting to see when we look at our actual route when we land in 80 days, how close to this.
I think it's going to end up being quite different.
Well, I'll just say we're going to fly straight directly across the whole entire Amazon rainforest, but it's probably not going to happen.
This tape actually worked out.
Yeah, I think it worked all right.
Now we're going.
That looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. I kind of want to say, like, it looks like something like a guy with a hat. This kind of looks like a guy, like a peak hat, and this would be like the face.
Okay.
They began flying it around the world, from Abu Dhabi last year, with stops in India and China, then across the vast Pacific.
Does running round your neighborhood prove that the neighborhood is round?
Just as a compass can place its center point on a flat piece of paper and trace a circle either way around the pole, so can a ship or plane circumnavigate a flat Earth. The only kind of circumnavigation which could not happen on a flat Earth is north-south bound, which is likely the very reason for the heavily enforced flight restrictions. Flight restrictions originating from none other than the United Nations, the same United Nations which haughtily uses the flat Earth map as its official logo and flag.
As you can see on the UN logo, the flat Earth map is overlaid with a grid. And that grid divides the Earth into 33 sections. And also, there's no Antarctica on this map. It's almost as if that grid were like bars, like a cell, locking us away from Antarctica, which is precisely what they're doing. The United Nations countries are all signatories to the Antarctica Treaty, which basically bans anybody from going to Antarctica. And if there's any absolute proof of either the globe Earth or the flat one, then I believe the answers would be in Antarctica.
David Wardlaw Scott says, "Circular sailing no more proves the world to be a globe than an equilateral triangle. The sailing round the world would of course take very much longer, but in principle it is exactly the same as that of the yachtsman circumnavigating the Isle of Wight. So is it in this world of ours. From the extreme south we can sail from east to west or from west to east around it, but we cannot sail from north to south or from south to north, for we cannot break through intervening lands, nor pass the impenetrable ramparts of ice and rocks which enclose the great southern circumference."
So, could the Earth really be flat? Most people, when they think of a flat Earth, immediately think, what happens when you get to the edge? Well, the flat Earth model is a flat circular disk with a north magnetic pole in the centre, and all the continents are laid out around it. On the edge of this disk is a wall of ice, and we call it Antarctica. There is no South Pole. That's why you can't fall off the flat Earth. The wall of ice keeps the oceans in and stops you from reaching the edge. The crux of this issue is the lack of direct flights in the Southern Hemisphere. I took a look at some of these flights and particularly focused on flights from Cape Town to Auckland, New Zealand. Generally, flights in the Southern Hemisphere tend to be indirect, with one or more connections and lengthy layovers. Such is the case with this one from Cape Town to Auckland. This flight came out around about 37 hours with a connecting flight in Dubai. Now if you look on a map, Cape Town to Auckland is a straight shot across the Indian Ocean, 7,310 miles. That should take about 12 hours. But in this case, we're taking thousands of miles north to Dubai, then back down south to Melbourne, and then across to Auckland. It doesn't make any sense. Until, that is, you look at it on the flat Earth model. Now you can see it's a straight line from Cape Town to Dubai to Melbourne. Now the GPS system would obviously show up any anomalies in the flight plan, But it seems they've found a very simple way of getting around that problem, and that is switching off GPS tracking for all flights in the Southern Hemisphere. Now, this is an image from Flight Tracker, and you can see straight off that in the Northern Hemisphere you'll see planes over the ocean, but there are none in the Southern Hemisphere. Now, I spent some time looking at it on flighttracker.com, and I actually verified this information, but I couldn't capture the data on my computer. So here's a video of planes disappearing and reappearing off the tracking systems.
So hey guys, I'm on planefinder.net. I'm tracking airplanes in the Southern Hemisphere, trying to do some research to verify or debunk this flat Earth guy. And what he said is that airplanes disappear in the South Atlantic near the, in the Southern Hemisphere when they fly over oceans. And it's true. I was tracking a British Airways flight from Buenos Aires to London, and I was tracking, and then it disappeared. And then I clicked on this plane right here, Qatar. See how the flight path, like when you click on the plane, the flight path appears or disappears, right? So I clicked on this plane looking for my British Airways flight, and I found this flight, and look, see how the flight path just starts in the middle of nowhere right here? His flight path starts in the middle of nowhere. That's because what they do with flights in the Southern Hemisphere is they disappear them. They turn off the GPS over the ocean, and then they reappear the flights about an hour before landing. And that's exactly what the flat Earth guy said they do. And that's exactly what they're doing. This guy's going to Rome. Okay. So this is a pretty good flight to track because he's going all the way to Europe. So I just clicked on this flight. Same thing. This guy, we should have saw him before when we were tracking the other plane and when we were tracking this plane that's heading to Rome. But this guy, when we were tracking the plane headed to Rome, he wasn't even on the map. He's coming from Abu Dhabi. It's in the Middle East. He's been in the air for what, 12, 13, 14, 15 hours? He's been in the air for 7,000 miles, and we're just picking him up right here. We're just picking him up in the middle of nowhere. Look, they disappeared the flight over the entire ocean, and they're reappearing it for landing about an hour before landing. Think about it. He's got 500 miles to go. It's about an hour before landing, just like the flat Earth guy said. I mean, take a look at what this guy's flight path should look like on a flat Earth model. This stuff's crazy. You have to look into this for yourselves. Don't pretend like you know everything, because you only know what you've been taught, and we know that the stuff we've been taught was a bunch of bullshit. So we need to question everything.
There are many flights in the Southern Hemisphere that have stopovers in seemingly nonsensical places that only make sense on a flat Earth. Santiago, Chile to Auckland, for instance, stops over in Los Angeles. Nonsensical on a globe makes perfect sense on a flat Earth. And the only way to verify these flight paths just happens to be switched off for all Southern Hemisphere flights. Let's take a close look at Antarctica. The first thing you'd encounter when you reached Antarctica would be a 200-foot wall of ice, followed by 300 miles of Antarctic desert. No life, no vegetation, and temperatures that drop to minus 100 degrees centigrade. And if you manage to survive that, then you encounter a mountain range 2 miles high. Those mountains are called the Rockefeller Mountains, and at the top is the Rockefeller Plateau. Interesting. And beyond that, nobody knows what's there. Apart from maybe one man, Richard E. Byrd. Admiral Byrd led 3 expeditions down to Antarctica. Now, the last 2 weren't just expeditions, they were military operations. Operation High Jump and Operation Deep Freeze.
So the ball earther's logical argument is that only a globe can be circumnavigated, the Earth has been circumnavigated, and therefore the Earth is a globe. This is indeed a logical modus ponens statement, but the conclusion is rendered invalid because the first premise, that only a globe can be circumnavigated, is categorically false. Another similarly logical but unsound argument ball earthers make is that only on a globe would one gain or lose time when sailing or flying east or west. Time is gained or lost when sailing or flying east to west, and therefore the Earth is a globe. Again, the logical conclusion is rendered invalid and the argument unsound because the first premise is incorrect. The same effect would be experienced on a stationary flat Earth as it would on a spinning ball Earth. William Carpenter says, "The sun, as he travels round over the surface of the earth, brings noon to all places on the successive meridians which he crosses. His journey being made in a westerly direction, places east of the sun's positions have had their noon, whilst places to the west of the sun's position have still yet to get it. Therefore, if we travel easterly, we arrive at those parts of the earth where time is more advanced. The watch in our pocket has to be put on, or we may be said to gain time. If, on the other hand, we travel westerly, we arrive at places where it is still morning, the watch has to be put back, and it may be said that we lose time. But if we travel easterly so as to cross the 180th meridian, there is a loss there of a day, which will neutralize the gain of a whole circumnavigation. And if we travel westerly and cross the same meridian, we experience the gain of a day, which will compensate for the loss during a complete circumnavigation in that direction. The fact of losing or gaining time in sailing round the world, then instead of being evidence of the Earth's rotundity as it is imagined to be, is in its practical exemplification an everlasting proof that the Earth is not a globe."
Eloquently said by none other than Mr. Eric Dubé. Shout out to ya, buddy. As this brings us full circle in closing, these things presented here, my friends, are real truths and very easy to look up and confirm for yourself. Just look at these flight paths. Or you can spend upwards of $15,000 to take a guided tour of an outer Antarctic ridge and take a picture with a ceremonial, figurative South Pole marker. Yes, you heard that correctly. Do any of these things ring strange to anyone? Because they certainly do to me.